Okay, hi everybody, welcome. It is 2 o'clock Eastern Time, so we're going to get started. I'm Dan Freeman from ALA Publishing. We are really happy to have you here today for our episode of AL Live. We are going to wrap up the 2015 ALA Annual Conference, which just wrapped up itself. So we're really curious to know why everybody's attending today. We'd like to know if you're on Twitter or if you're in the chat space, let us know whether or not you attended the conference in person, or if you didn't have a chance to attend at all, or if you attended virtually in some form. We're just curious to see why people are attending today, but our goal is to help you get caught up and see what you missed, whether you were there or not, because even if you were there, you probably still missed some stuff, because that always happens. So I am really happy to have our panelists with us today. First, I want to introduce Jason Griffey. Welcome, Jason.
Hey, Dan.
Hey,
everybody.
And for those of you that don't know Jason, he is an eminent library writer, consultant, jack of all trades, presenter, conference attender, and everything else. So we're thrilled to have Jason with us. And next, I want to introduce Amanda Goodman. Welcome, Amanda. And Amanda is the user experience librarian at the Darien Public Library in Connecticut. So between Jason and Amanda, we should get a nice diversity of perspective. And for those of you who are in the audience, the chat space is there. You can chat there at any time. You can ask questions. I'll relay them to Jason and Amanda. Or if you're using Twitter, AL Live is our hashtag. You can feel free to chime in there with your questions. With that, Jason and Amanda, I know you guys are going to sort of collaboratively present here. So I will turn things over to you.
Great, thank you. So I will start with a little disclaimer. I spent most of the conference in different meetings, so I kind of like just hopped around, and then I was asking other people like what they were interested in. So just as a little background of what I saw.
Yeah, I think for both Amanda and I, the conference is pretty heavily meetinged up, right? We're both fairly involved with a number of either committees or boards, and get into the rare presentation. It has to be something pretty special to get into the schedule. But we saw some pretty good ones while we were there. Certainly enough to identify some themes of the conference, and hopefully brings to you. You want to go first, Amanda?
Sure. So first up, my favorite thing that I saw at the conference was a presentation by Miguel Figueroa. Do you know his name?
Figueroa.
Thank you. And he's from the Center for the Future of Libraries. And so he was talking about how he spends a lot of time watching like the trends which are going on, and his website breaks down like several different ones for libraries to be following. And what he was saying is that the best trends to be watching for, in his opinion, is seeing what the hospitality / the retail are wanting to do and what they're doing. So, for instance, he said that if you were in a hotel at this conference and you're looking around, you'll notice that your experience with it nowadays is very different than like 5 to 10 years ago. So, for instance, when you go in, it said, have you did a mobile check-in? Go through this special line. Of course, there's the big displays, so you could tap and find out where your meeting spaces were. And he was telling us to think about how those would apply within our own libraries. And so what he was also said is the things that drive trends are basic needs, shifts and triggers, so that would be more like an aging population and the economy, and then innovations, which are going to be new things which are capitalizing on innovations. Like, I somehow want to connect this to an Apple Watch, but I'm not sure how to do that in that space. And then the final thing that he said about that was, where there's a trend, there's going to be an anti-trend. So, you know, this whole idea of being online all the time. You have your smartphone, it's always like underneath your pillow, but there's going to be spaces where people are like, get offline, relax. Maybe this is where the library is. Maybe this is or just a space in the library. So that's the best thing that I saw at the conference. How about you, Jason?
Yeah, so what I thought was my favorite thing, the best thing that went on at the conference really wasn't a thing so much as it was a generalized trend, and the trend that I kept seeing come up over and over and over and over and over was one of attention being to privacy, security, surveillance. All of those words kept coming up again and again in presentations, in poster sessions. There were two separate, fairly large events that were associated to but part of the American Library Conference. One was run by NISO, the National Standards Group, called the Striving for a Consensus Framework to Privacy, and then having series of online meetings over the course of the last couple of months, and then they had a 2-day in-person meeting there at just after ALA Annual. The goal for that particular group is to set up a set of some framework principles for patron privacy in library systems. They're working hard to try to document some things that are followable by libraries. I thought that was a very formalized sort of way of going about the discussion of privacy. And then the other fairly large event, many 100 plus people, was the post-conference put on by the Library Freedom Project, who is a group dedicated to educating libraries and librarians about patron privacy and about systems privacy, about protecting their own systems. And that was an unconference style event that was held at Noisebridge, one of the hacker spaces in San Francisco, that focused on kind of two kind of large tracks. One was kind of issue-based discussions, so discussions by the kind of leading edges, leading minds in patron privacy, or in private in general, on surveillance, copyright issues, privacy, general security, activism in those spaces. And then they had a separate track that was all tech tools. So there was an entire kind of set of tools that were taught during the thing, aimed specifically at librarians. So things like understanding using something like Wireshark and sniffing your own network to know what's going on while what is actually being passed around in main text. Encryption algorithms like PG, and how to use things like off the record with your chat, so that your patron chats are not interceptable, so when patrons ask you questions over chat, they're not interceptable third parties. Things like Tor, the Onion browser, an anonymous networking service that protects browser privacy and browser identification. HTTPS, and using HTTPS everywhere. The EFF was there to present their new tool, Let's Encrypt, which is coming in September. An archive was there. It's a really just kind of overwhelming amount of discussion about patron privacy. In addition to those big kind of overarching post-conference sorts of things, it came up again and again, even in discussions, even in committee meetings that I was a part of. It was brought up. It came up in the President's Program for RITA. It came up in the President's Program for RUSA. Dana Boyd was the presenter at RUSA, and she was talking about privacy and surveillance a great deal during some of her remarks. So that kind of very large overarching umbrella really kind of it shadowed the entire conference really while I was there.
Yeah, I've seen leading up to the conference on I think it's the patron privacy listserv, where people are talking about like libraries get like with the HTTPS doing more so, but I had a bit of a different experience than you did at my meetings, where instead people were talking about tracking patrons so you could do better marketing to them. I think I heard that in about 4 or 5 different meetings, and everybody was very careful about, retail is already doing this and we're losing out on that type of data. Patrons may not care as long as we're being careful and not reselling it. And that way you can then target, like, you like this book, you'll really like this one instead. So I saw the exact opposite.
Yeah, no, I don't see those as necessarily opposites. They are they're complements, right? You have you have the need for libraries to protect the privacy, right? It's a deep held, it's a thing we do, protect the privacy of reading experience and the attention-seeking experience. But we also want to give good service, and sometimes those are in conflict. Not always, but sometimes those are in conflict. And finding out how to skate that conflict, how to slice it the right way is I think it's going to be an ongoing discussion in library land. I certainly got the given the thing I heard a lot of the marketing talk as well. I mean, one of the things I did at the conference was talk about my new project, and it is very much in that kind of narrow between Measure the Future. It is a very much gap between like privacy and analytics that allow us to help our patrons, right? Like there are gaps, I think, that you can drive between that will be useful for libraries, but it is something we've got to be pretty careful about, I think.
Yes, absolutely agree. By the way, I was going to mention one session here, kind of slightly related. The Rethinking Patron Engagement, Making Data-Driven Decisions. That was a panel, and you can read about it on the American Library Magazine website under the title of By the Numbers. So this isn't actually a program that I didn't get to attend. I was in a meeting, of course, but this one was talking about using data to create market segmentation. In particular, the Seattle Public Libraries, they used it for their Millennium Factor project team, trying to figure out how to provide services more aimed at millennials. So, people are approaching this in several different ways.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, definitely. And I'll give a reference to something as well that happened both at the conference and just before the conference, and that is, if anyone out there is interested in seeing and taking part in some of the discussions going on patron privacy, I think one of the best places in ALA right now to do that sort of work is the lead patron privacy interest group. They're doing some document creation as well. There's putting together a patron privacy pledge, actually, that is being a collaborative document that's being worked on to try to put something before libraries that they can actually act upon, give them some language to use with vendors and that sort of thing about this issue. So the Patron Privacy Interest Group is available, obviously, through the ALA website. You can go in and sign up for the discussion list. I think they're doing a really good job in kind of framing all of these different issues.
Yeah, that's the one that I've been following.
Yeah.
So next up, Jason, what did you see about 3D printing?
Oh man, so much 3D printing. I jokingly at one point over the conference called 3D printing the entry drug for makerspacing, right? It's the one the one that everybody starts with. I was a little disappointed in that at ALA Winter there were actually a couple of 3D printing companies in the exhibit hall showing off their printers, and while there were good maker exhibits at the exhibit hall in San Francisco, I didn't see any actual 3D printer companies, which I was surprised by. I thought there would be more of the annual, and indeed there was not. So I thought that was a weird trend. I thought that was something that I wasn't sure why that would have been the case. It is kind of becoming, I would say, normalized, but it certainly seems like the sort of thing that's becoming much more mainstream. Lots more people talking about it. More tools kind of available for libraries and librarians. Did you see any particular tools that you liked?
Well, I basically did a big run through the exhibit hall, but yeah, I didn't see anything about 3D printers. I saw like little bits and other little circuit things instead. Yeah. But I did attend two different 3D printing meetings. My little disclaimer is I'm the chair for the Lead at 3D Printing group, and then I went to the OITP one. And people were really interested in, first, like, what is the public perception of 3D printing? And so one person gave an example of taking a picture of your dog and just like putting it into a 3D printer, and it'll just print it out from that one single photo. Yeah.
It's a magic world I want to be part of.
Yeah, I know. So we have like a little bit of a learning curve to teach people that's not exactly how this is working.
Yeah.
Let me see. So along those little bit of lines there, what the people in my interest group, at least, they're wanting to know about the library's responsibilities regarding 3D printing, such as, are we responsible for teaching classes about them? Do we teach people like how to actually make the 3D models? We usually use Tinkercad, and that was the one that came out a lot in my session. And how do we teach/respect copyright and intellectual property? So from that, switching over to what OITP was talking about, and they're behind, that's the Office of Information Technology Policies. And so they're doing policy revolution, which is like getting libraries' interest in front of national lawmakers and, influencing them to like make decisions which are beneficial to libraries. So like in regards of 3D printing, do not, California, had that, there was that discussion about having a law there that said that libraries have to put these big old signs up about intellectual property and kind of scaring people.
Yep. Yeah, the IP issues around, I've again had lots of discussions about that at the meeting, and OITP is leading a lot of those discussions at this point, and that particular piece of the discussion of 3D printing is huge interest to me, because it is, we are so used to dealing with copyright that in the terms of books and journals and things, we kind of, I think, the nature of the profession is to understand a little bit of copyright, even though it gets complicated as well. But we know copyright so well, and we use it so often that we this new thing, want to launch it and call it copyright problems, but it's not usually, right? Like 3D printing, the issues that arise over 3D printing and the intellectual property issues particularly arise over 3D printing, very rarely is it a copyright issue. Sometimes it's a trademark issue, sometimes it's a patent issue, but it takes some serious mental gymnastics to try to figure out exactly how you would have a copyright issue with 3D printing. Because that is a much rarer, much rarer case. So I think that some of the work that OITP is doing as far as clarifying some of those pieces so that people are more aware of the different segments of intellectual property law and the fact that, X may apply to 3D printing, but Y may not, especially depending, on this particular question, right? What's going on as far as the replication goes? Those are conversations I'm very interested in, because I'm a legal language wonk, and I enjoy kind of parsing out the intellectual property stuff there. It is not something I think all librarians would be quite as interested in, though. It's a fairly esoteric little segment of it, but I think it's important for us to have some big information out there. I agree. I think OITP is doing some good stuff.
Yeah, and just in case anybody's interested, they've released several white papers. I think the shortest one is maybe about 2 to 4 pages, and it just gives you like an overview if you're interested more about like how you can respond to copyright concerns regarding 3D printers in your libraries. So what is about the Knight Foundation? We had a request on Twitter come in for that.
Yeah. So I am. This is a little bit self-serving in that I am a little bit involved in the stuff there. But we had a question someone actually asked, so I will answer. There was part of a panel was put on that was put together by the Knight Foundation, actually, that revolved around Kickstarter. There's a decent of interest in how libraries use crowdfunding. That was really the kind of focus of the panel. I thought it went pretty well. We answered we had some really good questions about libraries and tried to look at some of the challenges libraries have around around doing crowdsourcing and using tools like Kickstarter or Indiegogo or those sorts of crowdfunding tools. My partner on the panel was actually one of the marketing public relations people from Kickstarter, so she's very knowledgeable about the platform and was able to answer librarians' questions about that. Unfortunately, that one wasn't recorded, so I wish I could point people at the recording of it, but the long and the short of the discussion was that it's a useful thing for libraries in as much as they have a product or an event that they're throwing. Right, Kickstarter is usually is only used for outcomes. It's there has to be some sort of product or event or occurrence. There's something that it points at. Just we like money to run the library, unfortunately, is kind of out of the scope of most of the crowdfunding things. I pointed out during the panel that, as a matter of fact, libraries are one of the original crowdfunding platforms. Right, we are, by our nature, crowdfunded, which I thought was something that most people may not think about it that way, and only think in this newfangled Kickstarter-y, Indiegogo kind of way. But the Kickstarter was very excited. My partner on the panel, Margot, was very excited about the idea of libraries and librarians using Kickstarter to do more projects and events and to help kind of bring more. One of the big benefits that came out as a discussion of the panel was the publicity and the fact that it can be a very useful marketing tool to get more and more people aware of what your library may be doing. In addition to raising money to do a thing, it's also a nice platform for here is the thing we are going to do, and getting people interested in it. So that was it was a really good panel. It was we had several hundred people that were interested in it, so it went really well.
Yeah, I know about one. I think it's a public library, and they did perhaps Indiegogo, and they were trying to raise money for a digital media lab, but the way they packaged it was help us buy a Hulk. So they bought like this giant 8-foot Hulk statue going ah, but it was all to raise awareness that they needed the money for this digital media lab.
Yeah. If you want to go look and if you want to see some of the things that other libraries have done in order to kind of get some ideas, if you go to Kickstarter, they do have a library tag. They have a specific tag in the advanced search just for library projects. Unfortunately, there are about 100,000 little free library projects and a fairly narrow range of projects from a library. Not that little free libraries aren't awesome, because they are totally awesome, but there are a lot of them in the crowdfunding arena. But if you go to Kickstarter to the advanced search and look at libraries, you can get some interesting ideas for the sort of thing your library could do.
So next up, exhibits. So since I was waving this around earlier, all right, so confession, I don't know how to pronounce this, but it's EPOCH, EPOCH? I don't know. It stands for Electronically Preserving Obituaries as Cultural Heritage. So the website is at epochlegacies.org, and this is actually coming out of the Los Angeles Public Library, I believe, and it's a way to have obituaries online, since nowadays people aren't reading physical newspapers quite as much, but obituaries are very important for genealogists. If you were to discover family history you can't find anywhere else. So they were asking me if my library might be interested in becoming the Connecticut affiliate of this program. I do not know, haven't brought it up yet, but as a genealogist, this was very impressive to me.
I did not see that. That's very cool. Yeah. So my favorite things that I saw when I was looking around the exhibits for ideas, I had two. I'm going to steal one from you because I know it was on your list too. And that is the new product from Library Thing. And Library Thing does a ton of different things for libraries with data and making your catalog interesting and easy. And they have finally moved into the actual catalog space. They have a new product that they just announced and just showed off for the first time at ALA called TinyCat. And TinyCat is a cataloging system with barcodes and the whole deal for very small libraries. And we sometimes, I worked in a medium-sized academic library. Amanda's a public librarian. We sometimes forget about the enormous numbers of very small libraries that organizations have, right? Church libraries, small municipal libraries, just in office buildings, things like, even very small public school libraries, right? And this is a tool specifically designed. It's online, browser-based. Doesn't require them to do any kind of installation of anything locally, and it uses the kind of library thing data as the back end. Really interesting, clever. I think it'll be very useful for a lot of small libraries. It's not going to scale. Darien is probably not going to use it, right? No. But for smaller libraries, it could be a really useful tool. They haven't announced pricing. They haven't even really announced availability. They were just showing demos of it at the conference, and they had announced it just before the conference. But I went and took a look at the demo, and it's very well done. Nice user interface. I think it's going to be really great for small libraries. What did you think of it? I know you had it on your list as well.
Well, I went by and I was very impressed with it. And what I was thinking about, and I told them at the booth, I build websites for very small, tiny libraries, and one of my current clients, they do not have an OPAC. They're open like 12 hours a week, one person, so I had to do like this crazy workaround in WordPress to try to give them something online so they can show that we have all these new books in the library. But as soon as I heard about that, I was like, oh my God, this would save me so much time. So I was impressed. But
No, I totally agree. I was impressed as well. I think it's going to be a really interesting entry into. It's nice to see that there's going to be a tool for these small libraries, right? Because there just wasn't really before. Nothing was easy and nothing was fast for them. So I think it's going to be a really cool service.
Mm-hmm. And then like I said, I did like a power sprint through the exhibit hall. I stopped by to see like our vendors and like hash things out with them and be like, hey, we need to discuss this problem. But other than that, which isn't relevant, sorry, genealogist here. I really like that Family Search. They have come out with a new little pamphlet, and so you see it's a very, very simple little pamphlet, but they normally have a booklet which is about 50 cents, but it's very heavily marketed as like, do temple work. What is going to have you contact the temple with what your family history is? But this little booklet, it has no mention of that except on the very bottom it just says, a service provided by the Church of Jesus Christ, blah, blah, blah. And I thought that was nice as, when people come in to do genealogy, they're always like, how do I get started? How do I get started? And so something very small like this would be nice to just be able to hand to somebody without, advocating for any particular viewpoint, just like you can fill it in with your family's info.
Yes, yeah. I won't begrudge you your genealogy. That's it's important and interesting stuff. If you won't begrudge me a little bit of uber techie love of the I always look around for, anytime I'm on an exhibit floor at ALA, I always look around for like, is there anything new, like technology, right? I'm always looking at like gadgets and new shelving, like is there anything interesting going on in anything hardware related? And unfortunately the answer is largely no. It's minor variations on the older tools that we've used. And the one that caught my eye this time is a minor variation, but it's a minor variation that I think actually has some usability benefits. And this was a company called PV Supa. PV Supa. They do RFID tools. They build RFID tools. So just standard kind of RFID like that libraries would use as a part of their materials handling process. Well, they had what they were calling the RFID returns shelf, and the entire shelf was wired with dividers that had RFID antenna in it. So in order to return a book, all your patron had to do was literally just put it on the shelf. So they walk in, you have an entire shelf that says returns, they just put it on there, and then it prints them a receipt. Your book was returned, right? So rather than having to deal with dropping it in and having it go through a materials handling process back on the back end of anything, or them having to do a check-in themselves on a self-check or something, it just you literally just put it on the shelf, and the shelf used its antenna and everything to tell what was going on. I thought it was really clever. It was well put together. It was well thought out in the usability of it. In that, the patron literally there was zero effort. They set it down and it printed them a receipt, right? So yeah, it was a super clever little build, and I look forward to kind of seeing how they do more of those sorts of things.
Yeah, at one of my sessions, somebody was talking about RFID with the same idea with the shelves, but they were, I think they said maybe Switzerland was the one that was working on this, and it was the same idea. Have the RFID, so you could just, like the vision of the library being like, where is this book actually on the shelf? If someone's picked it up and put it in the wrong spot. Yeah. And so it looks like that they were doing something with that. Unfortunately, I don't have any further details.
Yeah, it was a very quick stop. I've got a couple of pictures that I can share on Twitter of the shelf and everything. They had two versions. One was a return shelf that was just open and you could just throw books on it, and then another was a closed shelf that you could open with a library card. So that also included the ability to check out from it. So you could basically swipe your card, open the shelf, look and see what was there, pick one, and it would check it out to you because it had all the pieces of info. So you didn't have no more no other interaction necessary. You just walk up to the shelf, and the only kind of control was that door to that was activated by your card. So it was it was clever. Within the boundaries of the tech we have now, nothing revolutionary, but it was an interesting, newer kind of UI, right? UX take on self-check. I thought it was cool.
Yeah. Over at the Top Tech Trends, this is another lead-up project. I noticed that most of the things that they were saying there, they harken back to like older ideas, which have been like fleshed out a little bit more. I'm trying to remember because I was live tweeting this fast, so I don't have a great recall about what I was tweeting it. But there was stuff about like the infrastructure. I believe there was more talk about the RFID. Was there something you picked up in there?
Yeah, I was really interested in a couple of things. The infrastructure discussion that was going on there. Top Tech Trends. If you guys, those of you that are listening, have not done an ALA, Top Tech Trends is a really very, very popular standing room only, and there were, I don't know, maybe 1,000 people there, maybe not quite 1,000. It was very full. It was very, very full, it's always interesting to see what the people that are chosen talk about as far as their kind of near future trends. And the dismantling the ILS, certainly, like you said, Amanda, it's not a new trend, right? Like, this is something that has been talked about for quite a while in library circles, but I guess it's just it's on that edge, right? Like, it's just about to really start happening, where instead of the ownership of your bibliographic data, you have APIs that call out to external data sources for your local users' bibliographic information, and you don't have this kind of siloed server in the back room that has all of your records on it. Instead, you're doing much more active calls to a distributed data source. This is being enabled more and more by the modern technology, but it's like you said, it's not a new idea. This is something that people have been talking about for a while, and even to the point where the iOS vendors are moving in that direction. Slowly sometimes, but they are moving in that direction so that you don't have that local data store.
Yeah.
The one that I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, you're fine.
Oh, I was going to say there were a few of them that caught my eye. One that caught my eye that I thought was really an interesting point was we often talk about new media and media that's upcoming that we need to start collecting. And one of the things that was discussed were podcasts.
Yeah.
And I love podcasts. Been a long podcast listener for a long time. I've even been on a few, and I really do love the format. Right? It's like it's talk radio except for narrow interests, and the idea that, of course, no one is archiving this stuff. There's these amazing media that's being produced. The Stranger, The Moth, Serial. There's these fantastic stories that are being told via this mechanism, podcasting. And podcasting is not new again, right? It's been around for a long time, but it's really got a renaissance going on. And the fact that no one seems to be really talking about archiving and stuff, I thought that was a fantastic point, and I was really interested in that piece of the trends discussion.
Yeah, there's a podcast I listen to. I think it's Content Matters, about like web content, but it's disappeared offline completely, and I wasn't aware of this, and I wiped out my phone data for a little while, and I cannot get this anywhere. It is completely gone. I've been tweeting at the person please on the back end, may I secretly continue to listen to this? No response. So yep. Very timely for me as a listener of podcast.
Yeah. If some of these go offline, like you say, there's nothing, right? There's no way to go back and see it again later. It feels to me like the early days of television or of movies, right? Like where we had all this burgeoning content and then it just got lost. We just don't have it anymore. The BBC, recording over old copies of Doctor Who, right? Like just these pieces of seminal media that people don't value, and then they go away, and then 50 years later, you're like, oh my God, how did we delete that? Right? But I really do. I agree with you. If these things go away, they just go away. And when we find out that we thought, when we decide they were important, we're just up a creek. Like that's what we're supposed to be doing. So it's saving the world from that. So yeah, that I would love to see a library step up and be like, no, we're just gonna take them, right? We're just gonna save them all.
Yeah. And so as a side note to that, I buy the tech books at work, and with the Serial coming out, that was huge at my library. I tried to buy a bunch of new podcast books, but the one I got was from 2007 because there's just not really anything available. So if anybody has any suggestions, please put it in the chat or Twitter or something, because I really want something new.
Yeah.
All right. The other thing I saw at the top tech trends was about open hardware. That was mentioned.
It was open source in general was a big topic, right? So open source software, but yeah, in my heart of hearts, I did a little cheer when the idea of open hardware came up. That's my, it's my deep and abiding interest in technology right now is trying to get libraries more aware of open hardware. So.
All right. So at this point, how about some little other side things which don't go into a particular category? Did you see?
Oh man, let me see. Let me look here. So I briefly mentioned, and I think it was recorded, was Dana Boyd's talk for the RUSA President's Program. Dana is a researcher who specializes in teen behavior online. She has done more or less the seminal research. She's the scholar for the behavior patterns of youth and how they interact with social media. She is also brilliant beyond reason, and just very, very, very clever and witty about her observations about that. And we serve teens, right? Like, we serve young adults and teens, and I thought it was just a brilliant choice for the President's Program. It was recorded. I don't think it's up yet, but I will tell everyone that if you want to see a really fantastic talk, I would recommend that one. She was really pointed at libraries and trying to make sure that we knew what we had and what we could do with teens and social media. It was really, it was great. So everyone should go listen to that when it goes up online.
All right. So like I said earlier that I didn't have time to go to many programs, so I reached out, and I have Angela Frederick. She's a school librarian, and she told me about the 2 sessions she attended. One was the Student Assistance 2.0, More Than Shelving and Stapling, and she says they give you some great ideas about how to utilize students' talents and interest in volunteering. So, they're not just doing like grunt work, they're actually like learning something. And they actually, from looking at the description of that program, they actually had some students there to talk about their work. And then the other one she said was Reading the Art and Caldecott Award Winners, which was a nice primer on how to critique the art in picture books. I have nothing more to add to that, but those were 2 programs as a school librarian she recommended.
Yeah.
And the other one, this is actually from my coworker who is a programming librarian. She said, going to the Rip Us Off, 6 marketing ideas you can steal and use at your library. This is from the Multnomah County Library up in Portland, Oregon. And so she says that we're going to be looking at this. Unfortunately, it was a Prezi, so for me personally, I can't look at the presentation, but you may be able to. So what else did you see?
Yeah, you have to take Dramamine before you watch one of those, right? Like, yeah, it's something. So I will mention the program that I had like highlighted and circled, and then like an arrow pointing at it in red on my schedule that I didn't get to go to because of a conflict. Was every annual, the Imagineering interest group for LIDA puts on a fantastic author panel with tour books. So it's very sci-fi and fantasy. I fully admit I'm a sci-fi fantasy nerd, but they had an amazing set of authors, including John Scalzi and Werner Vinge, 2 of my favorites, and they were both on the panel. There was others on the panel, and I apologize for not remembering the others, but those were the 2 that were the most interesting to me. And then they did a signing afterwards, after the panel, and they have that caliber of author kind of every year. It's one of my favorite events, and the fact that I wasn't able to go to it this year with 2 of my favorite authors on it really hurt me. That's one of the things that a lot of librarians focus on at ALA, are meeting the authors of their favorite books, right? There's a lot of authors that come and do talks and things. It's a really rich history of really great people, great authors coming and speaking, and that one particular was the one I had my eye on this year, and I didn't get to go because of a conflict. But if you do get to go to ALA Annual next year in wonderful Orlando, Florida, then take a look at the Imagineering interest groups program, because they always have just fantastic authors that come to that.
Oh, I saw that Scalzi was in San Francisco on Twitter, but I didn't realize he was at ALA.
He was.
My heart, it hurts.
He was. I know, right? There are too many good things. That's one of the things about ALA Annual, is that it's just so big that you can't possibly see everything that you want to see. I think the number I heard, and you may have heard a different one, was about 23,000 librarians. That was.
I believe in total it was around there, I think.
Yeah, that was. It was 22 and change. It was almost 23. The official number, obviously, ALA will have up, but I believe it's in that range, which is a fantastic conference. It was a wonderful size, and San Francisco was a great city to be in. I was so happy to be a part of it. So well, what do we got? We got Boston coming up, right, for
Yeah.
midwinter, and then Orlando for next ALA annual. So hopefully they'll continue to be awesome. Boston in January might be a little worse weather than San Francisco in June, but
Yeah, nobody warned me San Francisco was cold. But I did want to throw in a thing that when I was going through the exhibit hall this year, I noticed that there was many more authors of color were presenting, which I guess that's coming from the We Need Diverse Books movement. So I was really appreciative to look around. I was like, oh, look at this. More people are here for that.
Mhm.
Hi, Dan.
Hi. So
I just
Any
wondered if you need to break in.
thank you guys for the wonderful presentation. We've had a great discussion both in the chat space and on Twitter. A lot of discussion, not a lot of questions so far.
Okay.
So if anyone has any questions for Jason and or Amanda, this would be a great time to ask them. But I did see one small, very specific question, Amanda, about the genealogy
Okay.
stuff. So someone commented that obituaries are not always part of the public domain, and wanted to know if this was addressed at all.
The lady that I spoke to, it seemed like it would be like family driven. So
Mhm.
like, they would be the ones. So you would tell your public, by the way, here's this space for you to post your obituary online if you want to. Now, I personally have no idea about like the newspaper and like how they feel about that, but it seemed like the family would submit it.
Okay.
Yeah, so I kind of feel like it's the obituary version of findagrave.com. So that's how I'm viewing it, at least.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, again, a lot of good discussion on Twitter here. Not seeing. I'm just going to check one last time, but yeah, somebody compared the resurgence in podcast to the resurgence in modern vinyl and cassettes. Actually, I didn't know there was a resurgence in cassettes. I knew there was one in vinyl. But,
Oh, you're right. I didn't know about that one
yeah.
either.
All right. Well, I think we are going to wrap up. So, Jason and Amanda, we want to thank you guys very sincerely. This was a great
Thanks.
broadcast. It looked like, by the way, in response to our initial question, I think most of our attendees today did not attend conference, although some did. And we had a lot of comments on Twitter. Someone said this was the next best thing to attending. So, whoever said that, we really appreciate that. And
The food is not nearly as good as San Francisco, I'll say that. The San Francisco food is a lot better than the food here. So.
Yeah. Well, we will be back on September 10th when we will be discussing digitization and libraries. So we're going to wrap up. Again, thanks to everybody, and we hope you have a great day. Have a great 4th of July weekend.